Welcome back to everybody's favorite, a Delta Force themed clone or die video. And today we're talking about the last M4 that Delta Force ever used, the Knights Armament MRE. The MRE was very short-lived in Delta Force. It came on the scene around the end of 2004 and was already mostly phased out by the end of 2005 because it was replaced with the HK416. Not to say that there were not holdouts for the Knights Armament MRE. You can see a couple of these rail systems rifles exist beyond 2005. In fact, there is even a photo of one Delta guy in training who has his 416 lower with an MRE upper. You're also going to see it with some of the rear echelon support guys that didn't necessarily get 416 straight away like the operators. You do see some of them retain the MRE. We're out here today in Arizona stand hunting some insurgents down here. We got word down, of course, through our intelligence services that there were some cardboard combatants down here and they were getting froggy. So we got the word to come on down here and check things out, see how it's going, see if we've got any cardboardy militants in the area. Frankly, they've been popping up all over Arizona stand these days. So honestly, it's getting harder to get them. You know, you go out into the middle of the desert, maybe, you know, public land, bam, cardboardy targets out there. Occasionally, they're even supported by some steel guys. And even more recently, rubber. Now, what exactly is the MRE? It's a modular rail extension made by Knights Armament. Essentially what it is a Colt M4 upper with this version of the Knights free float RAS put onto the system. Now this has a variety of advantages. At the time, Delta was primarily using older RIS rails, which are not free float systems and exert weight on the barrel, especially any attachments that you add to the gun is going to put force on the barrel, causing the gun to be less accurate. Now the free float RAS system had been around because of the Mark 12 program. This is essentially a variant of the free float RAS from the Mark 12 that they put a notch in for the front sight. Now, prior to this being issued, there are a couple of guys you'll see with the older carbine free float RAS systems instead of the RIS or the RAS, and they're running those. You can occasionally see those, although those are very distinct because they end at the front sight post like your normal Knights Armament rail instead of being extended like this. Obviously, Delta is primarily running 14.5 carbines at this time. They're not running short 10-inch guns until the HK416 rifles. They don't really use Mark 18s or CQBRs, whichever terminology you want to use. Same thing, but they don't really use those. Delta's mission set more keeps them towards the 14.5 M4 rifles. It's not a complete KAC upper. It's really just the rail that they start to get issued out on the existing guns. Obviously, there are other Knights Armament parts that are being utilized. Of course, the NT4 suppressor. This is NT4 compatible. Granted, suppressors are not quite as widespread yet in 2004, 2005. That's really more once we start to get the Block 2, that suppressors become widely available and everybody starts using them. So you do see some guys with suppressors, but a lot of guys are still not using them. Now, the primary advantage of a system like this, other than being free float and resulting in your gun being more accurate, is you also get more rail space to put your flashlight further forward, eliminating shadowing. On this gun, I have the Surefire 660. This is a legacy light, holdover from the late 80s, all the way to the early 2000s. Really doesn't get replaced until the Surefire M600A. Incandescent bulb, 60 lumens, built like a tank, super durable. I can see why they lasted in Delta Force for so long. The same lights from Black Hawk Down. Honestly, these are just fantastic weapon lights, although dated now and only being 60 lumen versus modern Surefires being 1500. Quite the difference. They were great for their time. They were durable. They were exactly what they needed to be. Fantastic light. I see why it lasted so long, despite attempts to replace it with SOP Mod Block 1 not working out, the Surefire being the better option, of course, commercially available. Now, also what I have on here is PEC 2. These started to replace the older PAC 4s in the 90s, and by the early 2000s, Delta Force was fully outfitted with PEC 2s. These were just kind of the standard. This actually is a real one as well. I've got 2 of these, and this is one of my full power real ones that you can find out there. Honestly, PEC 2s have become pretty available, affordable if you're looking to build early 2000s GWAT gun like a Mark 12, an M4, an MRE, maybe an early 416. These are still pretty solid options, although if they do break, it's a gray market thing, so you can't get them replaced. But they're great options. They still work fine with modern night vision. They are IR only, so they do not include a visible aiming laser. Unfortunate, it makes it a little bit harder to zero. You have to zero it under night vision. Holding over from a classic Delta Force item from their M4s all the way to their 416s, I've got my EOTech 551 on here. This is the early version with the earlier button style instead of the button style we know today. This just lasted for so long. It's a great optic. You really can't fault EOTech. They made a fantastic product. A lot of people liked it. Notably, I have mine co-witness mounted right now, but a lot of guys would run these on LaRue risers or those other nameless risers, which I've talked about in my other Delta Force M4 video. We're not really sure what those are, but they did exist. On the backup iron sights, this is still very much so the time of backup iron sights. Guys haven't really gotten rid of them yet, although we're kind of right on the precipice of that. I have the KAC 300 meter sight, so it was issued as part of SOP Mod Block 1. Same with the Maytech, there was also another issued option, but honestly, it's just a superfluous backup iron sight thing. I'm primarily using my red dot anyway, so it's just on there because guys would be required to have it, or they wouldn't have full trust in red dots yet, so they would have it just in case. It is what it is, it's exactly a backup. You know, hunting owl cardboardy, it's not easy work, but it's honest. Another notable option specifically for the KAC MRE is you'll see a lot of guys with the Schmidt & Bender short dot, which is a 1:4 LVPO in the LaRue mount. Those are really cool. Kind of hard to find these days. They haven't made that scope for a while, but they are another notable option of where we see 14.5s with a suppressor and a very earlier, I wouldn't say the earliest, because there are definitely guys in 90s that used LVPOs, but one of the very earlier adoptions of the LVPO. The only rifle I would think is like a better evolution of that is John Chapman's rifle. Video for another time, we'll talk about that later, but fantastic concept. Very similar to this kind of gun. Going back from there, I've got my Colt M1 stock. This is the standard. Generally, you're gonna see either this or the SOP Mod stock are the two predominant stocks used by Delta Force during the time. Colt M1, it's just a good option, fantastic option, can't really go wrong. I love it with the rubber recoil pad. One of my three favorites, Colt M1, SOP Mod, or CTR. It's hard for me to go outside of that. Notably, I do have the KAC QD mount added on here, which just allows me to do a QD mount for my sling. This is a pretty neat little thing that you can put on either a car stock or an LE stock or a SOP Mod stock, just goes right in the sling loop. KAC, I don't think they make these anymore, or they're fairly hard to get, but PRI makes a thing that's basically identical, almost exactly the same, which is a very good option that you could go and purchase. Another notable Delta Force item I've got on here is I've got an original Lone Star grip. These were very valuable and hard to get for a long period of time, but recently a reproduction has been brought back, so you can go ahead and you can get a Lone Star grip. These are kind of a holdover from the 90s type thing. A little bit fatter A2 grip, a little bit bigger in your hand. It also has storage that an A2 grip doesn't have. So these are fairly, they're a neat option. I think they're like, you see them on a lot of Delta Force things, so I think it looks like good on a Delta Force rifle. It just kind of belongs. I've talked about my upper. This upper is a Colt, so this is a factory Colt other than the Knights Armament flash hider and the Knights Armament rail, of course. Other than that, it is a keyhole C-stamp, kind of one of the earlier Colt 14.5 uppers. My lower, I have a Bad Attitude M4 marked lower. I think Bad Attitude are fantastic value for what you're paying. They've kind of become my go-to for a lot of clones that I build, just because they are so available. They're not that expensive, they're easy to pick up, and usually they don't even take that long to ship. I typically get them before the stated timelines are. Plus, you can customize some cool things like your serial number. You can have a custom one, whatever you want, which is pretty neat if you want to do like 42069 or something. That's your prerogative, not mine. I don't know what's going on there. A few more notable things to talk about. Now, I have a KAC broom handle grip on this. I like these grips. This is my preferred early 2000s vertical grip. It's just very comfortable. Slim, maybe a little bit long compared to modern standards, but it is what it is. It's contemporary to the time. A lot of guys you're still going to see running the gangster grips, and I really don't like those. I talked about that before. The gangster grip I just find extremely uncomfortable to shoot, so I prefer the KAC grip. You'll see these occasionally, they're not as common. Most guys you're gonna see with the gangster grips. Some guys you're just gonna see running nothing. They're just running flat Picatinny rail, or they're running the KAC rail covers. I have a bunch of the KAC rail covers, but I typically don't run them. I just don't need them, but they are fairly common. You also can see some of the Tango Down rail covers sometimes. Those pop up occasionally, but the KAC predominantly are the ones you're going to see, or just no rail covers like I have right now. I just like the way it looks with no rail covers. It looks pretty cool. So I'm happy with this the way it is. And I'm just a broom handle supremacist. I don't like the gangster grip at all. It's just terrible. For my sling, I am running an early 2000s black VTAC sling. This is one of the many slings that you would see Delta Force using during this time period. I think the VTAC still holds up today. I think it's a fantastic sling. You really can't go wrong with the Viking Tactics. They just kind of made it really, really a good design. And most modern slings function kind of the same. It's quick adjust. Essentially, they're all evolutions of the old Alice Gear strap mod that Delta guys in like the 70s and 80s and 90s would turn into slings. It's all kind of an evolution of that, just with added padding to make it more comfortable for when you're carrying your rifle. Now, you've listened to me exposit a lot of information about perhaps the shortest lived Delta rifle. It's not short-lived because it was bad. It's just short-lived because it happened to come online right at a time the HK416 came online. Honestly, 14.5 is a fantastic barrel length. I love 14.5. It's really ideal because if you think about it, a lot of the short guns like 11.5 and 10-inch guns with a suppressor, they're essentially in the same length category. That's really the kind of the preferred, where I would prefer to keep it. Obviously now with a suppressor, this kind of puts it out to the 20-inch category, makes it a little bit long. And I understand why a lot of guys were not using the suppressors at that time. It perhaps was less important to them. Suppressors have great advantages, like being able to mitigate your muzzle flash, reduce your sound signature, make you harder to spot in a firefight, but they're also heavy and they trap heat on the gun, so they're hard. If you dump a mag or two through them, you can't touch them anymore. So it's advantages and disadvantages, but I think the advantages on suppressors outweigh the disadvantages. It just took a long time for them to be accepted in the role that, okay, everybody needs a suppressor now, not just specialized guys or not just marksmen. It's important that we give this advantage to every single operator we have out on the field, because why not? Why not stack the deck in your favor? Never fight fair, of course. And suppressors are a good advantage. They're pretty commonplace now, thankfully. Special operations, I can't think of a unit that doesn't run suppressors pretty much 100% of the time, unless they're in very specialized environments or very specialized roles. There are even guns created like the LVAW, specifically for suppressed firing, 300 blackout. So they definitely have their time and place, and I understand this was part of the development. Now this particular gun, I'm not shooting it with a suppressor right now because it is mounted up with a crush washer instead of rings. And while you can shoot suppressors with a muzzle device that's mounted with a crush washer, and it can be fine, generally I tend not to. I don't trust the crush washer enough versus spacers, which is what you really should have when you're shooting with a suppressor. This would probably be fine on this gun, but I'm very paranoid about my expensive suppressors, so it's just mounted with a crush washer right now. That's how I bought it from a friend of mine. He knew I'm into Delta Force guns. He's like, hey, I'm selling my MRE upper, you want it? So I jumped on it. It came with all the parts. I got it for a fantastic deal. I really can't complain. And at some point, I'll eventually take the muzzle device off and fit it properly so I don't feel paranoid about shooting it with my NT4 on it. But given that Delta the majority of the time was not shooting this with the suppressor, I'm fine with it the way it is. Now I probably will get the LaRue riser for the EOTech to put that on there. I think that's a very iconic look. Of course, there are guys that ran Co-Witness, and Co-Witness is totally kosher and totally fine to run. But I'm more of a lower 1/3 guy. I'm not really an absolute Co-Witness kind of person. And I know today a lot of people like high mount, say like 193 or 22. Generally, those are a little high for me, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm shooting with night vision or something like that, I typically like lower 1/3, but that's just personal preference. Go with what works for you. What works for me might not work for you. Now, some of the other things that you might see on these rifles for the stock, you might see the Chakotay or Cherokee cheek riser. Obviously, these are very, very difficult to get. They originated in the 90s and they stopped making them. You can get a Hemi 3D prints one. He makes a reproduction that's 3D printed today. I think that's just something neat. That's not something that I got paid for or anything. I think it's kind of cool and an option, especially if you're running that Schmidt and Bender, might be a good option for you. Just something to consider. If you're looking to build your own kind of Delta Force gun and what route you're looking to go. These existed at a very interesting standpoint right when brand new things were starting to come online. So early on, you'd see the PAC-2, and then a little bit towards the end, you'd see the PAC-15. Early on, you'd see the Surefire 660 or the Gangster Grip. Then a little bit later, you might start to see that Surefire M600A. But they were right kind of at the turning point between Block 1 and Block 2. These guns existed. So it kind of makes them they have a very unique blend of attachments when they're being utilized by Delta Force that I think is kind of neat. With the kind of missions Delta was conducting at the time in Iraq and Afghanistan, I understand they're not running the 10-inch guns. They didn't really need the super short guns. They're not Navy SEALs, where the CQBR came about as specifically as a requirement to replace the MP5. So I understand why they're stuck with the 14.5, better ballistics anyway, and the kind of missions they were doing didn't necessitate those super short guns, and they weren't necessarily running suppressors like I talked about 24/7 anyway. And the 14.5, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm a 14.5 supremacist. I really think it's one of the perfect ideal 5.56 barrel lengths. It's really something that is hard to go wrong with, and it shoots very smooth. Now this is a carbine length gas system, so it's not a mid-length like our modern ARs were, but honestly, I think people over-exaggerate gassing on a lot of these older guns. Obviously with a suppressor, it can spit quite a bit of gas back in your face, but without, I think they're tuned very nicely and they shoot pretty smooth. Honestly, this gun I can shoot pretty fast. I can keep it on target pretty good. It's just a smooth overall package. You know, it's a little bit on the heavier side because we've got an extended quad rail, but that just leads to recoil mitigation. The gun shoots smooth. Personally, you can't go wrong with a 14.5 build. And something cool like this, if you're doing a Delta Force MRE, honestly, a lot of these parts are still pretty available. So it's not too hard to build one of these. It's not even that crazy expensive. I didn't spend a ton of money on this, and I still have an really cool, you know, 2004, 2005 Delta gun. To go with my Delta Force gun, I need a Delta Force kit, of course, based around that time period of 2004 to 2005. Now, Tom Spooner, my kit is primarily based on him, but it's based on a few other operators as well. I don't typically one-to-one a specific operator, but I will take elements that I like and add on to what they were using during the time period. So I've got a Paraclete CVC mesh on, which is like a slick plate carrier. Mine happens to be a modded one, which is pretty cool. And you'd see a lot of Delta Force snipers utilizing these at the time. And then I have a Paraclete rack over it, which is just Paraclete's version of the Ranger chest rig, which I think is a fantastic chest rig. It's just super basic MOLLE. You put on whatever you want. Of course, I have all Paraclete pouches on it. These are a little bit of a mix. Some of them are post MSA, some of them are pre MSA. I don't have all pre MSA pouches. It would be super cool if I did, but unfortunately I do not. And honestly, even an older setup like this, I think is still fairly contemporary. Chest rig over body armor, still popular to this day. Really kind of hard to beat. Very comfortable to wear. For my belt, I have the tried and true leather Bianchi belt. Very popular even into the 2010s. Guys running these over the less stiff kind of operator, maybe Eagle or Blackhawk belts or rigger mod belts. These are just a little bit stiffer and a little bit more comfortable for what you're carrying. On here, I've got a modified Colt 1911. I'm running the Colt today. This is something that will appear in a future video with Surefire, old school Surefire on it. Of course, in my Safariland holster. I've got two 1911 mags that get kind of hard to reach down here, but I can still kind of lean over and get to them. I've heard a lot of people talking like the past, like, oh, why are you doing that lean over to reach your magazines? It's like, well, contemporary to their time period, a lot of body armor systems like this CVC was very large, so it kind of blocked you reaching your pistol magazine, so you kind of had to lean over to it. It's just kind of people that don't take context into alignment. I also have on my other leg, I have a Blackhawk medical blowout pouch, which I think just kind of looks cool. Add something, you know, this is very much so the time of strapping shit to your legs. We're a little bit past that now, except for maybe a gas mask pouch, but I think it looks just cool for the time period. Plus it's great as a general purpose pouch, because I do also have a med pouch on my chest rig, my radio, my magazines. I've got a couple of flashbang pouches. I've got a smoke grenade pouch and a knife, very conveniently fit all across here, as well as just a simple IR VIP strobe, very common to the early 2000s. For my uniform, this is actually something a little bit unique that I should talk about. This is a Paraclete soft BDU, and this one was actually issued to a Delta Force guy before I bought it from. These are fairly rare uniforms that did not last very long. I can honestly see why they are less comfortable than just the normal BDUs. I would rather just wear a raid mod, I think, in the field for long periods of time. The fabric is just more comfortable on regular BDUs, the cotton blend, than it is on these, but you do see these pop up occasionally. It's pretty rare item, so I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to have one. It is pretty cool. I got it in unissued condition, so immediately I thought, yeah, let me wear it and go out to the desert and get dirt on it naturally. But they are a pretty neat, very specific Delta Force item for Delta Force and their support personnel, so I figured I'd show it off to you guys because it is kind of cool. For my helmet, Delta Force at the time, of course, was using the Mitch 2002, which is the mid-cut version of the Mitch. That's the version they adopt, whereas Debru goes with the 2001, and then other units just get the normal 2000, kind of what the Army gets as well. I've got my Anvis mount set up on here. Delta Force, until very recently, continued to use the Anvis mount for their night vision, basically from the early 90s all the way up to the 2020s. They were using various kinds of Anvis mount, but they did not go to the ground mounts really during this time period. You're not going to see those. They're going to be running PVS 23s, which are a variant of the Anvis 6s. A lot of people confuse the PVS 23s with the Anvis 9s. They're very similar, but they're not exactly the same thing that Delta was running. And of course, I've got all the accoutrement on there for that. I've got my battery pack that is required. I've got my cool painted helmet, My Bali goggles, these were, I think, very iconic for the early 2000s. You'd see a lot of Marines, a lot of Army, a lot of Navy guys wearing these old school Bali X5000s, I think they are. Just an iconic piece of kit that I think looks really cool on your helmet. So not too complex over here, but you know, those 2002 mid-cluts, very, very much so a Delta Force item. There was not too many users of them outside of Delta. On my back, of course, I've got an old school Camelback mule. This is something specifically that you'll see Tom Spooner wearing with his CVC mesh. He's got a black old generation Camelback mule, so I have it as well. Just holds your hydration, is a good pack, holds a couple of other small items that you can throw in there. Super compact, not really a bigger backpack, couldn't hold something like a radio or something like that. Just something easy to hold, maybe your water and a couple of magazines, something like that. But adapted from civilian to military use, and later they made more military specific versions, but they're all running the older Gen 1. I think it's kind of a cool early 2000s, you know, maybe late 90s Delta Force item as well. You have once again made it to the end of me ranting autistically about something cool that was used by Delta Force, CAG, softy, whatever terminology you want to use. Go ahead and pick one, they all mean the same thing. In what is a very interesting rifle because of how short-lived it was, but it does remain with the iconic status of being the last M4 Delta Force ever used. Thank you for making it all the way to the end, and I will go ahead and see you in the next Clone or Die, whenever that may be.